Okay, you can begin.
Good afternoon, class. Today's presentation will be on the topic of leadership, power, and influence on Chapter 12 of the Daft textbook. I am Jessica Indar, and this is basically how we're going to distribute our parts. You can take a quick look on it to see what we'll be discussing. I will first speak, as shown here, then Stephen, then Chanel. My group members are, as you know, Stephen Chinika and Chanel Sahario, and I'm Jessica Ndar. Let's get started. So, this is the objectives of my part. You can take a quick look at it. I expect people to know what transformational and charismatic leadership is, to know the difference between transformational and transactional leadership, to know what makes a charismatic leader, to tell what the black art of charisma is, and to define and understand power, influence, and leadership. Let's get started. So, what kind of person do you hear when you think of the word power? Maybe you would think of somebody with a lot of known power, like politician Donald Trump, or maybe even a business leader that's very popular around, like Elon Musk. It doesn't have to be somebody of high power, I suppose. Maybe it can just be somebody with more authority, like a teacher. So, to start it off, we'll begin with transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. So, as seen in the slide, transformational leadership typically has a substantial impact on followers and can potentially renew an entire organization, while a transactional leader is a transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers. The transactional leader recognizes followers' needs and desires and then clarifies how those needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting specified objectives or performing certain duties. So, by this definition, it is a bit confusing to understand both about them, so allow me to expand on them. Rather than analyzing and controlling specific transactions in the transactional leadership, with followers using rules, directions, incentives, transformational leadership focuses on intangible qualities such as visions, shared values, and ideas in order to build relationships, give large meaning to separate activities, and provide common ground to enlist followers in the change process. Transformational leadership is based on personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than the exchange process between leaders and followers. But the best way to understand and differentiate between transformational and transactional leadership is by comparing them. So, on this slide, we can see how transactional leadership differentiates from transformational leadership. So we're going to focus on transactional leadership first. So from the definition on the slide, they say that transactional leaders focus on the present and excel at keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. What this means is that they are good at traditional management functions such as the planning and budgeting, and generally focus on personal aspects of the job performance. Transactional leadership can be quite effective by clarifying expectations. Leaders help build followers' confidence, and in addition, it satisfies the needs of subordinates. Improve productivity and morale. However, because transactional leadership involves a commitment to follow rules, transactional leaders maintain stability within an organization rather than promoting change. Transactional leaders are important for all leaders. However, in today's world, in which organizational success depends on continuous change, effective leaders also use a different approach. The next one here is that transactional leaders typically emphasize stability and maintenance, while transformational leaders instigate significant change within both followers and organizations. So, however, effective leadership often requires a blend of both transactional and transformational styles. The leaders must demonstrate the ability to create a vision and inspire others while also employing transactional competencies such as designing organizational structures, control systems that facilitate the achievement of that vision. A versatile example of such a balanced leadership is Mike SQ of UPS, who exemplifies the interplay between transactional and transformational leadership qualities. So this brings me to my next slide. Please note that these are the four highlighted because it's the four main transformational leadership, four ways that transformational leadership differentiates from transactional leadership. So the first point is that transformational leadership turns the people that follow them into leaders. And what does this mean? It provides them with independence to manage their own action within defined boundaries aligned with organizational objectives. It brings awareness among the followers regarding the issues and problems, and it encourages them to gain a new perspective and to go along with the productive change. The second one is that transformational leaders influence their followers to exceed their own self-interest for the betterment of the group. And what this means is that, excuse, it makes them prioritize themselves instead of just the organization. So it creates a sense of admiration and trust between followers and leaders. Most importantly, transformational leadership fosters the belief in necessity of change, prompting followers to make personal sacrifices for the greater good. The third point is that transformational leadership is the ability to articulate a compelling vision of desirable future, effectively communicating the beliefs of embracing change. So, although there is a lot of change going on in the organization, the transformational leader makes them believe that the change is for the better and that change is not always a bad thing. And this vision is fundamental as it incites the actions and underpins the other characteristics of transformational leadership. Change can only occur when the individuals possess a shared sense of purpose and a clear picture of where the organization is headed. Without this vision, transformational leadership is unattainable. And lastly, transformational leadership evaluates followers' concerns from basic psychological needs such as safety, security, higher psychological needs, including self-esteem and self-actualization. This means that while addressing immediate needs through appropriate circumstances and safe working conditions, transformational leaders prioritize individual, group, and development, thereby thinking that personal aspirations to organizational missions. So these are all reasons to why transformational leadership and transactional leadership differ from each other. So this brings me to another leadership style that we'll be discussing, and it is the charismatic leadership style. But to first understand what charismatic leadership is, we must first understand what charisma is. Charisma is a skill that one develops while striking things like their attention, interest, excitement, or even um, from those who follow them. So when we hear charismatic leadership, we obviously take a interest in what that means. This definition doesn't really give us much to work with. So I would give you an example to understand a bit more. Have you ever been around a charismatic person? Anybody in this class? So a charismatic person can be defined as someone who makes you want to do things that you usually wouldn't do. I know that I have, and they usually make me get outside of my comfort zone. For example, there were a lot of times that I came across them in secondary school. Like, for example, I am the slowest person you would ever meet. Yet, a charismatic girl from my class convinced me that I should run a race with sports day, even though I convinced her that I genuinely couldn't do it. But at the end of the day, she instead convinced me to run the race. Did I believe that I could run this race? No. But her words of encouragement made me think that maybe I can do it. Even though she convinced me to do it, I still lost the way. I still lost the race. But the entire point of that story was to show how charisma works on someone and how charismatic people and leaders use it to their advantage to persuade others to gain control. Have you ever noticed that charismatic leaders appear in times of need, whether it is in a social or organizational situation? I noticed this in my personal experience that I spoke about right before, that and I noticed that the girl only ever spoke to me, and it was to convince me to run for this process since nobody was interested in participating. So that is an example of how charisma works and how the charismatic leader uses charisma to their advantage. So, what makes them so special? Excuse Charismatic leaders don't just demand attention from others, they effortlessly control it. They appeal to many people because they not only appeal to their minds, but also their hearts. And in the other side, another reason why they are so special is because they often appear in times of crisis, whether it be in the organizations or society itself. This happens because followers often feel a sense of relief and are less stressed when a strong and inspiring personality is in the lead. So, what are some examples of charismatic leaders? Know that if you've read the chapter before class, you'll see that the textbook gives Amir Khalid, who was known for being a young and charismatic leader in Egypt during the East crisis on the 21st century. As said before, charismatic leaders normally appear in time of need, so he definitely fits this example and qualities of a charismatic leader. So he ended up to, to deliver an emotional and very moderate speech to these people, which made him a very good example. So, in the organizational aspect, instead of societal um, side of things, an organizational example would be Loy Ward, who was brought in as a chief executive of the United States Olympics Committee. At the time when the organization was torn by internal strife and suffering a loss of public trust, the USOC believed Ward, known as the master motivator with the ability to unite and inspire people with a vision, could use his charisma to heal the fractures in the organization and restore the US Olympics glory. And my last example for this charismatic leader is Oprah Winfrey. So, excuse?
My apologies.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so since charismatic leaders are looked up to because they have a strong opinions about right from wrong, she is the perfect example of a charismatic leader. Her confidence, reliability, and insights have led her talk shows to earn multiple awards and foster a deep bond with her viewers. So, before I get into this slide, I'd like to talk more about the types of charismatic leadership. We know the definition of charisma, what a charismatic leader is, and some examples of them. But there are some things that I would like to bring to your attention while I was researching this chapter. We've learned so far that there is social and political charismatic leadership. But please allow me to expand on them and tell you more about what I've learned. So, there's this thing called inspirational charismatic leadership. Inspirational charismatic leaders possess unparalleled ability to stir emotions and ignite fervent sense of purpose among their followers. Just like everybody knows Gandhi, they are often found at the forefront of movements that aim to bring more about significant social political change. These leaders are exceptional orators using their words to paint a vivid picture of a better future. Inspirational, charismatic leaders can move masses to take actions, making them instrumental in driving large scale societal shifts. Our next one is the personal charismatic leader. Personal charismatic leader connects with individuals, often emerging as mentors, coaches, or even parents. Their influence is more one on one, but it can have profound and lasting impacts on the lives of those who they touch. And the last one is one that we heard a lot in this chapter, and these are the social charismatic leaders. Social charismatic leaders are very good at building communities and fostering a sense of belonging among their followers. They often emerge in religious or social movements, creating a shared identity and purpose. Social charismatic leaders create a sense of unity and purpose that transcends individuals' interests, leading to collective action and change. For instance, Mother Teresa's unwavering commitment to serving the poor and disadvantaged made her globally recognized as a social charismatic leader. So this makes us think that charismatic leaders can raise people's consciousness about new possibilities, motivate them to transcend their own interests for their team's sake, department, or even organization's sake. So after we now know what transfer, transactional, and charismatic leaders are, this is a table that was included in the textbook itself. So these are qualities that non-charismatic leaders may possess and charismatic leaders do. So, likableness. Non-charismatic leaders have a shared perspective that makes the leader likable, while a charismatic leader has a shared perspective, an idealized version to make the leader more likable and an honorable hero worthy of identification and imitation. Trustworthiness. The non-charismatic leader is disinterested in advocacy in persuasion attempts, while a charismatic leader is passionate about advocacy by incurring great personal risk and cost. The relation to status quo, the non-charismatic leader tries to maintain that status, while the charismatic leader creates an atmosphere of change. Future goals. The non-charismatic leader has limited goals and not too descriptant on the status, while charismatic leaders are idealized, have an idealized vision that is highly descriptant of status, QU. Articulation. Non-charismatic leaders tend to have weak articulation of goals and to motivate and lead. Strong and inspirational articulation of vision and motivation to lead is a characteristic of the charismatic leader. Complements. The non-charismatic leader uses available means to achieve goals within a framework of the existing order, while the charismatic leader uses unconventional means to transcend the existing order. Behavior. The non-charismatic leader is conventional and conforms to norms, while the charismatic leader is unconventional and doesn't really conforms to the norms, so they counter-normative. Influence. The non-charismatic leader has primarily authority of positions and rewards, while the charismatic leader transcends position, personal power based on expertise and respect and admiration for the lead. So, this brings me to the black cat of charisma. These are some points that would be mentioned in what I'm going to talk about, so you can take a look at that. But what exactly is the black cat of charisma? I know that when I first read about it, that I instantly thought that it was just a fancier version of charisma, but that's not the case. The chapter says that even though there are people who would use charisma for their advantage of whether it is benefiting the organizations, groups, or society, like John F. Kennedy, again, Mr. Gandhi, and even Winston Churchill, there are persons who use charisma to fulfill their own selfish wants. They use charisma to exploit, manipulate, and deceive others. And some examples of these could be Adolf Hitler, Charles Manson, and Idi Amin. Sorry. What makes the use of charisma so dangerous is the fact that it targets the followers emotionally and not logically. Just like as we spoke before, the charismatic leaders aim for the heart and the mind, not just logically. So the distinction between charisma that produces favorable results and unfavorable consequences can be explained by the distinction between personalized and socialized leaders. Leaders who respond to organizational issues by considering their own wants instead of the needs of the groups of people, as well as those who frequently take action that have devastating effects on people. While socialized and charismatic leaders are uplifting and helpful, charismatic leaders are self-aggrandizing, exploitative, and caring about oneself is a foundation of personalized behavior, while valuing others is a foundation of socialized behavior. So, personalized charismatic executives can significantly harm the organization's long-term performance according to studies. A pattern of socialized behavior is exhibited by leaders who have continuously improved and corporate performance. So after discussing charismatic leadership, I will now provide you with a video to help you understand it a bit more before I close the section off.
Charismatic leadership is a management style where leaders inspire and motivate their followers through their charm, persuasiveness, and strong personal presence. These leaders have the ability to articulate a compelling vision, evoke strong emotions, and create a sense of loyalty and commitment among their followers. Charismatic leaders often use their personal appeal to rally support and drive organizational change. The term charismatic leadership was first introduced by sociologist Max Weber in the early 20th century. Weber described charisma as a form of influence that arises from an individual's extraordinary personal qualities. which inspired devotion and obedience in others. He identified charismatic leadership as one of three types of authority, alongside traditional and legal rational authority. Later scholars, such as Robert House, expanded on Weber's work by exploring the psychological and behavioral aspects of charismatic leadership. Here are two examples of charismatic leadership. First, consider a political leader who captivates their audience with powerful speeches and a compelling vision for the future. This leader's charisma and ability to connect with people on an emotional level inspire a strong sense of loyalty and enthusiasm among their supporters. Second, think of a CEO who transforms a struggling company by articulating a bold new strategy and rallying employees around this vision. This CEO's dynamic personality and ability to inspire confidence lead to a revitalized organizational culture and improved performance. Let's look at three benefits of charismatic leadership. First, charismatic leadership can lead to high levels of motivation and engagement. By creating a strong emotional connection with their followers, charismatic leaders can inspire enthusiasm and commitment, driving individuals to go above and beyond in their efforts. Second, it can facilitate organizational change and innovation. Charismatic leaders often possess a visionary outlook and the ability to persuade others to embrace new ideas and approaches, which can help organizations adapt and thrive in changing environments. Third, charismatic leadership can enhance team cohesion and morale. The personal appeal and strong communication skills of charismatic leaders can foster a sense of unity and shared purpose among team members, improving overall group dynamics. Now let's explore three criticisms of charismatic leadership. First, this leadership style can create dependency on the leader. Followers may become overly reliant on the leader's vision and direction, which can hinder their ability to think independently and make decisions without the leader's input. Second, charismatic leadership can sometimes lead to a lack of accountability. The strong personal appeal of charismatic leaders may cause followers to overlook their mistakes or unethical behavior, potentially leading to negative consequences for the organization. Third, it can be challenging to sustain over the long term. The intense emotional connection and high expectations associated with charismatic leadership can be difficult to maintain, and the departure of a charismatic leader can leave a significant void that is hard to fill. But charismatic leadership isn't the only leadership style, which is why you need to watch this video on every type of leadership style. I'll see you there. Charismatic leadership is a management.
So after we played the video, I hope you understood a bit more about charismatic leadership and this closes off the section for the leadership style. So now I would be discussing power, influence, and leadership. So power and influence are important in leadership in order to get things done. Power is an intangible force in organizations. Power is also the ability to achieve goals or outcomes that power holders desire. Power is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence other people to bring out desired outcome. And then we have a definition of influence over here. It is the effect of a person's actions have on attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. And there's a comparison in this definition too. Whereas power is the capacity to cause a change in a person, influence may be taught as a degree of actual change. So in the textbook, these are all definitions of power that I came across. So there isn't really one way to describe power, but these are many ways that we can define them. So strength is the capacity of an individual or division within an organization to affect others to achieve intended results. We can see this in one of the definitions of power. And there's something called potential power, and it is achieved through the mechanisms of politics and influence. Sometimes the concept of power and influence are often seen as the same, yet there are differences when separating the two, especially influence, which refers to the impact on an individual's behavior that an individual's behavior has on the beliefs, and values, attitudes, or actions of other people. And we can see that's the last definition over here. And then it goes on to say, while power is the ability to bring out modification in an individual's influence and can be viewed as the extent of real change. For example of what this means is that as a kid, you might have encountered the experience of engaging in a game you weren't really interested in playing, since one individual in the group swayed others to participate in what they desired. So you could probably want to play hide and seek when you're a little kid, but some other child might come and be like, oh, I don't want to play that. I want to play something like tag. And they could probably just persuade the other children into playing tag instead. Or it could even happen in like your college life, something that we are currently experiencing. So this is an example. Maybe you altered your college major due to the impact of a significant person in your life, or your views changed on certain social concerns influenced by political or religious authorities. This is something we see every day with people, that they will constantly go on to do something else just because their views would change on what they're doing. So even though we are typically considered power, typically consider power and influence to be attributes of the leader, in truth, they arise from the engagement between leaders and followers in circumstances. So this brings me to the end of my part over here. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to do so before I pass you on to my other partner. Okay, so since there are no questions, I will now pass you on to Stephen to begin his part and to continue power, influence, and leadership.
Hello, everyone. At present, good evening to everyone. M- m- My objective for this presentation is to identify and explain the 5 main types of leader powers, understand how dependency increases a leader's influence, and recognize how people respond to different use of power, and finally explain how leaders use politics to build and maintain power. So let's begin. Next slide. Today, we begin by talking about the 5 main types of leader powers. Power is the most important ideas in leadership because it shows how leaders can influence others and guide their behavior to reach organizational goals. Every leader uses power in some way, and the way it is used can affect teamwork, motivation, and overall success. By using these different types of power, leaders can know which approves which works best for different people and situations. The first type is legitimate power. This comes from a person's official role or authority within a group or organization. It means that others follow the leader because of the positions they hold and the responsibilities that comes with it. This power allows leaders to make rules, give instructions, and make important decisions. It is based on trust in the system and recognition in that certain rules come with authority that others may respect. Next is reward power, which is based on leaders' ability to offer benefits, recognition, or positive outcomes to others. This kind of power encourages people to do their best because they know their efforts will be appreciated. Reward power can be very effective when used fairly and considerably, as it builds motivation and a sense of achievement. It helps create a positive work environment where people feel valued and supported. Next is corrosive power. Corrosive power is another form that focuses on control and discipline. It is the ability to influence people by using consequences or penalties when rules or expectations are not met. While this kind of power can make people follow directions quickly, it must be used carefully. Reason is because because too much pressure or fear can lower moral and reduce trust in the leader. Effective leaders use corrosive power only when necessary and balance it with respect and understanding. The fourth type, expert power. This comes from a person's knowledge, skills, and experience. People respect and follow these leaders because they believe in their ability to make good decisions and solve problems effectively. This power is earned over time through learning and proven results. When a leader has expert power, it creates confidence among team members because they know the leader has the because leaders had a compliance to guide them towards success. Finally, reference power is to build on admiration and respect for the leader's personality, values, and behavior. It develops when people generally likes and trust their leader. This type of power encourage loyalty, teamwork, and enthusiasm because followers feel inspired and connected. Leaders with referent power often create a strong sense of unity and shared purpose. It is one of the most powerful forms of influence because it is based on genuine respect rather than authority or controls. Next slide. Next, we look at the difference between the five types of power. Legitimate power, position, reward power, benefits, corrosive power, punishment, expert power, knowledge, reference power, influence. The key differences between these types of power lies in how leaders acquire influence and how followers respond. Legitimate power is connected to a person's official role or position in an organization. This means people follow the leader because of the authority that comes with the job, not because of who they are personally. For example, a school principal has a right to make and enforce rules because of their position. People respect and follow these rules mainly because the principal holds that title. Next, reward power is based on the leader's ability to give out rewards or incentives, which people know they can earn something valuable. They are often more willing to follow directions and perform well. Employees might work harder when they expect bonuses, public praise, or extra time off from meeting goals. This power helps create motivation through positive reinforcement and appreciation. Next is corrosive. Corrosive power works in the opposite way. It is based on the ability to punish or control fear. People may do what the leader says to avoid negative outcomes like losing privilege, being disciplined, or getting fewer work hours. While corrosive power can make people complete, comply quickly, it often leads to stress, resentment, or low morals if used it too often. Expert power comes from a leader's special skills, knowledge, or experience. People respect and trust leaders who clearly knows what they are doing. Based on this expertise, others are more likely to listen to the advice and follow their decisions. This kind of power builds confidence and encourages strong commitment for followers who believe in the leader's ability. Finally, reference power is built on admiration, respect, and trust. People follow these leaders not because they have to, but because they want to. These leaders inspire others through their character, value, and the way they treat people. They often serve a role models, and create loyalty by earning general respect. Understanding these Understanding these differences help leaders know when and how to use each type of power. A good leader doesn't rely on only one kind of power. They balance them to guide, motivate, and influence others effectively. Next slide, please. Next, we'll look at the role of dependency. Power depends on how much others need you. More dependency equals more power. Leaders gain power when others rely on them. Dependency plays a very important role in understanding how power works. In simple terms, power comes from how much others rely on you. When people depend on a leader for resources, information, or even support, that leaders naturally gain more influence. The more people depends on you, the more power you have. Think of it like this. If someone have something other needs, that person becomes valuable. In the workplace, employee depends on managers for directions, guidance, and opportunities. When this dependence is strong, the manager has greater control and influence. However, if employees can easily find another job or get what they need elsewhere, the leader's power decreases. I want you to remember that. Leaders who understand how dependency works can use it wisely. They, they can build power by becoming valuable to others, by developing unique skills, offering important resources, or providing useful knowledge that others can't easily replace. These type of power does come from force, but from being needed and trusted. In short, dependency shapes real influence within a organization. Leaders who make themselves essential by being dependable, skilled, and supportive gain lasting power that helps them guide their team more effectively. Next slide. Next, we're looking at some examples. Star quarterback equals more college people want him. Job scarce, managers have more power. Job employees have more power. Okay, let's take a closer look at how dependency works in a real-time situation. In the first examples, think of a star quarterback in high school. Many colleges want to recruit him because his skills is rare and valuable. This gives the quarterback power and choice. The colleges depends on him more than he depends on them, which increases his influence. In the second example, when jobs are scarce in the economy, managers have greater power. Employees depend on them for security, income, and opportunities, which give managers the upper hand. Workers can feel pressure to accept rules or conditions just to keep their jobs. However, the opposite happens when jobs are plentiful. In that case, employees have more power because companies complete compete to attract and keep good workers. Managers must offer better pay, flexibility, or work environments to retain them. These examples show that power doesn't exist on its own. It depends on how much one person or group needs another. Leaders who understand this can adjust their strategies to maintain influence without abusing authority. Next slide, please. Next, we will look at responses to the use of power. Compliance, resistance, and commitment. When leaders use their power, people don't all react the same way. There are three common responses: compliance, resistance, and commitment. Each one shows a different level of support and motivation from followers. Compliance happens when people obey instructions, mainly because they must, not because they believe in them. They do what's required to avoid trouble or to please the leader, but their heart isn't really in it. For example, an employee might finish a task just because the boss told them to, even they don't think it's important. This response helps things get done, but usually without enthusiasm or creativity. Resistance occurs when people disagree or refuse to follow orders. It can show up in many ways: arguing, delaying work, or quietly ignoring directions. Resistance often happens when followers don't trust the leader or follow that the leader's decisions are unfair. It's a sign that communication may be weak or that the leader needs to build more understanding and cooperation. Commitment, on the other hand, is the best response a leader can hope for. This is when people truly believe in the leader's vision and give the best effort because they want to, not because they have to. When followers are committed, they feel motivated, loyal, and inspired to help them succeed. Commitment is powerful because it creates teamwork and a strong sense of purpose. Leaders who uses personal power, like expertise and respect, are more likely to gain commitment than those who rely only on authority or control. Next slide, please. It's a key take on the other slide. Commitment, doing as told, may not agree, resistant, ignoring or disobeying instructions. Commitment, fully embracing the leader's vision. And personal power is more effective than position power for engagement. To wrap this up, this slide, let's take a closer look at what we really learn about how people respond to power and why it matters so much for leaders. When people show compliance, it means they're doing what they're told, but not because they're motivated or inspired. They're following directions to meet expectations or avoid punishment. This keeps work moving, but it doesn't spark creativity and enthusiasm. Leaders who only rely on authority often see this kind of behavior. It gets short-term results, but doesn't build true commitment. When followers show resistance, they're pushing back against the leader's influence. This might mean ignoring other orders, questioning decisions, or showing a lack of cooperation. Resistance slows progress and can create tension within the team. It often happens when people feel unheard, unvaluable, or disconnected from the leader's visions. The most desirable reaction is commitment. When people are committed, they don't just follow instructions, they believe in the leader's goal and want to help achieve them. Commitment brings energy, creativity, and teamwork. It's what transforms an ordinary group into a high performing team. Now, a key point to remember is that personal power is usually stronger and more effective than position power. Position power comes from titles, rank, or informal authority, like being a manager or supervisor. But personal power comes from who you are, your your expertise, your integrity, your ability to inspire, and the respect people have for you. Leaders who use personal power create trust and loyalty. Their team feels valuable, support, and motivates to give their best over time. This type of influence leads to lasting success, not just because of the leader, but for the entire organization. Next slide, please. The ripple effect on leadership. Influence start with yourself. Position in action spread outwards. Impact individual, family, communities, organization, the world. The ripple effect is a concept introduced which shows that leadership isn't just about holding a title or being in charge. True leaders begins with your own actions, decisions, and attitudes. What you do every day creates it creates effective efficient sorry effects that extends far beyond yourself, much like ripples spreading out when a stone is dropped into a water. When you act with honesty, kindness, and responsibilities, it first influences that people closer to you, your family, friends, classmates, or colleagues. This they notice how you handle challenges, how you treat others, and how you make decisions. Your positive behavior can encourage them to act similarly, create a small but meaningful chain reaction. Next, these efforts reacts to the wider community. People who observe or interact with you may adopt the same values, work ethics, or to problem solving. Other time, this can influence organizations, clubs, or community groups, helping improve how teams functions, how people communicate, and how goals are achieved. Eventually, the ripple effect can even reach society at large. Small positive actions like volunteering or leading, by example, can inspire others to do the same, creating a large impact that you might imagine. This idea teaches us that leadership isn't only about authority or formal power. It's about the you set every day, no matter your role, whether you are leading a team project, helping a friend, or contributing your community. Your actions can inspire others and create a ripple effect that spreads outwards, leaving a lasting impact on people and organizations around you. Next slide. Next, we'll be looking at the sources of leaders in power organizations. In dependency, control over information, organization, centralized, and coping with uncertainties. Okay. Leaders do not gain power only because of their job title or position in organizations. Power often comes from how much the other people depends on you and how well you control important resources. Understanding these sources of power helps leaders influence others and achieve goals more effectively. One source of power is in departmental dependency. This helps this happens when one department or team relies on another to get important material resources or help. For example, if one team has the expertise to fix crucial or critical equipment, other team becomes dependent on them. The team that others rely on has more influence and power. Leaders in such positions can create decisions and actions because the others needs their support to succeed. Another source is control over information. Leaders who have access to important data or know how to use it effectively can influence outcomes. By decision, by deciding how and when to share information, they can shape decisions, guide strategies, and help others achieve their objectives. And employees in low-level positions can gain power if they have information that others need to make decisions. Next is organization centrality, is also a key source of power. This refers to how important a person's role or department it is to the organization main activities. Departments or leaders involved in core operations, such as engineers in a tech company or marketing in a sales-driven business, have more power because they work directly after the organization's success. The more central your role, the more influence you have. Finally, coping with uncertainties is another important source of power. Leaders who can manage challenges, risk, and unpredictable situations are seen as valuable and reliable. When others are unsure what to do, they turn to these leaders for guidance. But helping the organization navigate uncertainties, these leaders increase their credibility, influence, and overall power. By understanding these sources dependency, information dependency, information centrality, and corporate uncertainties, basically all these four, can see where their power comes from and how to use it effectively to guide their teams and organization towards success. Next slide, please. Next, we'll be looking at increase power through political activities. I think you made a mistake. I think you have to go to the previous slide, but that's okay. You can remain there. Doing your job well is important, but it is not always enough to gain real power in an organization. Others need to see the value you bring. If people are not aware of your contribution, your influence is limited. Leaders who increase their power when their work is visible, recognized, and appreciated by colleagues, managers, and stakeholders. One way to grow power is through visibility. Being seen in the action helps others notice your skills, decisions, delegation, and ability to handle responsibilities. If leaders quietly do their work without showing it, they may be overlooked, even if they are performing very well. Recognizing is another key fact. When people, when others are acknowledged your efforts, you gain credibility and influence. People tend to trust and follow leaders who contributes and clear, who contributes are clear, contributions are clear and valuable. Recognition can come in many ways, such as praise awards or being asked to lead important projects. Leaders can also increase power through relationships. Politics in leadership is not about manipulation. It's about building connections, alliance, and networks. Leaders who understand how to work with others, support team members, and communicate effectively are better able to achieve goals and influence outcomes. Political activity means using power and relationships strategically. It involves understanding organizational priorities, connecting with the right people, and finding ways to get work done effectively. Leaders who practice political skills essentially ethically can gain support for their ideas, build trust, and make a bigger impact on their teams and organizations. In short, increasing power is not just about what you do. It's about making sure your work is seen, understood, and respected, while also building a strong relationship that helps you lead more effectively. Next slide, please. Basically, that was my side. Sorry about that. Next slide, please. So that was my explanation at this point. Next, we're looking at what is political in leaders. Politics in leadership can achieve used it to gain and use power. Activities use it to gain and use power, aimed at achieving goals when choices are uncertain and can be positive or negative. I wanted to take A closer look at that can be positive or negative. Politics in leadership is about how leaders use relationships, actions, and influence to get things done. It's not always a bad thing, even though some people might think of politics as negative. In leadership, politics is necessarily because sometimes rules and authority alone are not enough to make things happen. Political activities are usually to gain, maintain, and use power effectively. Leaders do this when decisions are unclear, resources are limited, or when there are disagreements in the organization. It is about understanding the environment, seeing opportunities, and acting in ways that help achieve important goals. Politics can be positive or negative. Positive politics involves building support for good ideas, creating teamwork, and helping the organization succeed. Negative politics involves selfish actions, favoritism, or manipulation, which can harm trust and teamwork. As a political skilled leader knows how to balance influence and relationships, they know how to communicate well, form alliance, and motivate others, which while acting essentially. This allows them to accomplish goals even when situations are uncertain and challenging. In short, to summarize this, politics, sorry, in short, politics in leadership is not about playing games. It's about being smart, aware, and strategic in how you work with people and get results. Leaders who use politics wisely can increase their power, but the teams and make positive change in their organization. Next slide, please. Next, we look at how leaders use political activity. Power must be seen to be effective. Politics help leaders gain and use power. Visibility, networking, and influence are key. For example, Donald Trump political awareness and visibility. That's another example. For political activity to work, leaders need to make sure that their work and contributions are visible to others. Just doing a good job is not enough. People need to notice that the results of your work, visibilities help others recognize your value, which is turn increases your power and influence. Leaders use politics to gain support for their ideas, build important connections, and influence decisions. This can be done through networking, sharing information, and showing initiative. When other people see your effort, skill, and reliability, they are more likely to trust you, support you, and follow your lead. Networking is also very important, but building relationship with key people in the organization. Sorry about that. Key people organization, right? Leaders create a group of supporters who can help them achieve their goals. This also allows leaders to stay informed about opportunities, challenges, and important decisions. Influence is the final piece. Leaders must be able to persuade others, guide decisions, and help others see the benefits of their ideas. For example, Donald Trump has shows how visibility, awareness of political environment, and strong communication can increase a leader's influence. In short, to summarize this, Political activity is about making your efforts known, building strong relationships, and using influence wisely. Leaders who understand these principles can make their work more effective and achieve their goals while helping the organization succeed. Next slide, please. Next, we will look like how leaders build power through politics. Take on visible responsibilities, volunteering for challenging projects, build relationships with influential people, stay informed and political aware. Leaders build power through politics by showing their values and making sure others see their cooperation contributions. It's not about being manipulative or selfish. It's about being smart and strategic so people recognize your abilities and trust you. Well, one way to do this is by taking on visible responsibilities. When leaders handle important tasks or represents their team, others can see their effort, skills, and problem-solving ability. Being visible helps people notice your work and increase your influence in the organization. Another way is volunteering for challenging projects. These tasks may be difficult or risky, but they are also give leaders a chance to show commitment and compensation, reliability, and creativity. Completing a difficult project successfully shows others that you can be trusted with more responsibilities, which strengthens your power and credibility. Building relationships with influential people is also very important. Politics is about connecting with your people. Leaders who network, form alliance, and maintain positive relationship create support for their ideas. This allows them to gain access to important information, resources, and opportunities that might otherwise be unavailable. Finally, leaders stay informed and politically aware. They pay attention to organizations, culture, goals, and decision-making processes. They notice who has influence, what issues are important, and how decisions are made. Political awareness also means understanding people's motivation, reading situations correctly, and communicating effectively to build trust. By combining these strategies, visibility, initiative, relationship, and awareness, leaders grow both their personal and professional power. Sorry, I lost it. They become more effective in influencing positions, outcomes, guiding their teams, and advancing their organization's mission. It's not about playing politics in a negative way. It's about being proactive, strategic, and aware of how to use influence responsible to create meaningful change. Next slide, please. Our last note on politics is how leaders use politics to gain influence. Politics make efforts visible and recognized, understandable, understand others' needs, goals, and viewpoints. Use political skills to influence decision and outcomes, activities, networking, volunteering, and impressive management. Increases personal power beyond formal authorities. Leaders use politics to make sure their efforts are seen and recognized by others. It is not just about doing good work, it is about making sure people notice what you do. Again, political skills help leaders get support for their ideas and influence decisions in a positive way. Again, a positive way. To be effective, Leaders needs to understand the needs, goals, and points of view around them. By knowing what others want or care about, leaders can adjust how they communicate and work with others. This helps build trust, gain cooperation, and get things done with more smoothly. Particularly, partic- political activities that helps leaders use politics includes networking, volunteering again for projects, and managing how others see them. Networking allows leaders to form important connections with people who can support them or share valuable information. Volunteering once again for projects gives leaders a chance to show their skills to be recognized. Impression management is about presenting yourself in a positive, confident, and trustworthy way so that others respect and follow you. Using these political skills, leaders can increase their personal power beyond what their formal position gives them. This makes them more influential, respected, and able to guide decisions, motivate others, and achieve goals effectively. Political skills, when used essentially, helps leaders create positive results for both themselves and their organization. Next slide. Again, we will talk about impression management. Impression management controls how others see you, build credibility and trust, and includes body language, confidence, and image, and creates excessive presence. Impression management is about showing yourself in the best way so that others trust you, respect you, and see you as a capable leader. It is not about pretending to be someone you are not, but about highlighting your best qualities in a professional and considerable way. Leaders who manage their impressive impression well can influence others more effectively and gain support for their ideas. One important part of impression management is body language. I'm sure you heard this in school about body language. The way you stand, move, and use gestures sends messages to people without even words. Standing tall, making eye contact, and moving with confidence shows others that you are capable, calm, and in control. Even small things like film handshakes or smiling at the right time can make a difference in how people see you. I want you to keep and I want you to understand that. Confidence is another key part. Speaking clearly and calmly, showing that you are able, that you are believe in your own ideas, and being consent in your actions make people feel like they can rely on you. When you are confident, others are more likely to trust your judgment and follow your directions. Your appearance also affects how people see you. Dressing neatly, being clean, and choosing appropriate clothing shows that you care about how you present yourself. This helps create what is called excessive exclusive presence or exclusive presence, which means people see you as someone who is capable, professional, and ready to take responsibilities. It's important to be considered. Your words, actions, and decisions should all match the image you want to show. For example, if you want to be seen as fair and honest, you need to treat people with respect, keep your promises, and make decisions openly. Over time, cons- this consistently builds credibility and trust, which are very important for leadership. When a leader uses impression management effectively, people are more likely to listen, support their idea, and follow their guidance. It helps leaders make a positive impact on their team. Depends on depend the team and department, and even the entire organization. By paying attention to body language, confidence, appearance, and considerable and consistency, leaders can make sure they are seen as trustworthy, capable, and influential. Next slide. Some key takes to know: power grows through a visibility and relationship. Politics is a normal part of leadership. I think we all can agree that politics is a normal part of leadership. As you can see, and you watch the news about Trump, you use power essentially to achieve goals, and influence depends on perception and communication. To summarize, power in leadership is about more than position. It's about how others preserve your value and influence. Leaders grow power through visibility, relationships, and political skills, ensuring their contribution are recognized. And finally, politics is a natural part of leadership, as we all can agree, and can be used positively to influence outcomes. Ethically ethical use of power is crucial. Leaders who misuse influence risk losing trust and effectiveness. Ultimately, influence depends on perceptions, communication, and the ability to connect your actions to organization goals. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, before I end my part, I just want anybody to just answer number 1 and number 2 for me, please, based on everything you heard so far about my part of this presentation. So if anybody want to answer number 1, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. For number 1, I think that the answer would be B.
And you are correct. The answer is B, to influence decisions and gain support. What's your name, by the way?
Nakia.
Okay, Nikia, thanks for taking part. You were correct. Would you like to do number 2 as well, or may I have someone else do that question? Would anybody else like to try number 2? Sorry.
Hi, this is Victoria.
Okay.
For me, number 1, I'll try my best with number 1 and number 2. For me, organizational politics is used to influence decisions and gain support. And for 2, which of the following is an example of impression management? For me, it's networking with powerful people, because where I work is a lot of politics, and it's not politics in terms of what we may think as the parties, PNM or UNCs, nothing like that. But because I work in a state-owned, the politics do affect. And sometimes because of those dynamics, we have to play politics inside. So that means understanding how management influence each other, because some management don't talk to each other. Now, it might sound like school, right? But it exists in organizations where different managers may not see eye to eye, but you may have to interact with them because. And then you may have another layer, which is like a layer above management that is between the board. So you may have the chief executives, and then you may have the divisional managers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes as a manager, you may have to interact with your divisional manager, which is under other departments, which is above other departments, I mean.
That's true.
And sometimes that can be very exhausting because it can get in the way of production.
Okay.
I see that happening sometimes. But I also want to bring up another point which was very interesting that you drew upon, which is the nonverbal cues, which is body language and facial expressions. And it's funny you mentioned that because I had a dilemma for the past 2 weeks where I had a worker who expressed themselves without saying a word and they offended somebody.
Wow.
And when that complaint came back, the person was unaware of what they did. And sometimes we may not be aware of how we express ourselves, and you're quite correct. We are not aware of how we express ourselves or how our facial expressions may be. And one of my workers, they went into our department, they saw some records that were soiled or somewhat, and they skinned up the face almost like if they're smelling the records. And the person in the department was offended by it because they felt as though, I wonder if she blaming me for the records looking like that. Right? And that came back to me. It didn't go to the worker. It came back to me, who is the lead. And when I expressed that, she became a bit defensive, but she wasn't understanding the politics or the dynamics in it. Because the administrative assistant could have mentioned that to her divisional manager, which could have had a conversation with my divisional manager. And that could have been very different for her. But we chose an avenue where we would discuss with her as a cautionary, at a cautionary level. But she didn't interpret that as a cautionary level. She wanted to go the full swing, get the persons who were involved and invite this one and I said it's not that type of conversation. I am not saying you did or you didn't, but what I'm saying is be mindful of how you present yourself, how you carry yourself, and remember it's a work environment and to always be professional. Because our clients, which is the departments, see us as the specialist. So I draw the reference, if you go to the doctor and the doctor skin up his face on you, how would you feel? So why
Exactly.
so sometimes we have to really pay attention to how we stand, to how we express ourselves, because it's not just about you. It's about who you represent. And I'm really happy that you brought that up because people don't understand that their
Mm.
facial expressions and their body language speaks a lot more than the words that come out their mouth sometimes. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you, Victoria, for that wonderful speech. And that was my end of the presentation. Now I pass you on to our final presenter for this afternoon. And now the floor belongs to Shellyan. The floor is yours.
Hi, good night, everyone. So I will be taking us through the final part of this presentation. So we'll take a walk together on some concepts, examples, and recommendations that I hope you guys would find helpful on your leadership journey. So our objectives for this evening is we will look at understanding strategies for thriving as a leader, some methods for asserting leadership influence, ethical uses of using power and politics, and then a final summary of the entire chapter. Next slide, please. Okay, so Leaders Bookshelf. This particular chapter was written by Ronald A. Heinsfeld and Marty Linsky. So let's look at what they said about leadership. In Leadership on the Line, Ronald Heinsfeld and Marty Linsky reminds us that leadership isn't easy. It's tough and often lonely. They say we all have chances to lead, but many avoid it. Why? Because real leadership means stepping into danger. As they put it, to lead is to live dangerously. When you guide people through difficult change, you're not just offering solutions, you're challenging their habits, loyalties, and ways of thinking. And sometimes all you have to offer is a possibility. It's a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about comfort, it's about courage. Next slide, please. So, strategies for thriving as a leader. Here are three key strategies Heinsfeld and Linsky suggested to help leaders drive change while protecting themselves from being undermined or sidelined. Think politically, manage conflict, keep your hunger in check. In the next slide, we'll take a look at the three strategies in further detail. Next slide, please. Right, so think politically. A key step is acknowledging the political nature of leadership. That means recognizing that leadership is not just about having good ideas, it's about building relationships and navigating power dynamics. Leaders can't make change happen alone. They need networks of support, people they trust, collaborate with, and can rely on to move things forward. At the start of any change effort, smart leaders should secure their allies, those who already support the vision, engage their opponents, not to fight, but to understand and possibly find common ground, understand the undecided, those who haven't taken a side yet. Next slide, please. Manage conflict. Any tough issue is bound to be accompanied by conflict. Conflict isn't always bad, it can lead to growth and development. A leader's job isn't to avoid conflict, but to guide it in a healthy way. A leader's job, sorry, most of us instinctively try to avoid conflict, but they argue that growth only happens when people are challenged by new ideas that push against their usual ways of thinking. As a leader, your role isn't to eliminate conflict, but to help redirect it into something that can be useful. That is by working with different opinions, emotions, and attitudes in a way that uses the energy of conflict to spark learning while keeping things respectful. Next slide, please. Keep your hungers in check. Managing your personal hunger, those natural human needs like recognition, control, or approval. While, yes, these are normal, leaders must be careful not to let them take over and cloud their judgment. Leaders must manage their ego, power, and desires. When personal wants like wanting attention, control, or praise takes over, it distracts them from the real goal. These behaviors can damage trust, confuse teams, and even break relationships. Even a sense of self importance can block a leader's ability to reflect, grow, and connect with others. Next slide, please. So, I have a small activity to challenge if you were paying attention. So, let's look at scenario one. Michael starts a project at work and decides to do everything alone because they think others might slow them down. But things get tough and there's no one to help. So anyone could answer, what strategy do you think he could have used? Anyone?
If he is the leader of the team, he could have delegated the work appropriately depending on the strengths of each team member.
Yes. Well, that strategy is thinking politically. He could have built relationships early on and he would have had support to help him when things get tough. So scenario 2, a group of 5 members are continuously arguing about a design for a new product. The leader avoids a fight, hoping that it will go away, but it only gets worse. What could this leader have done differently? What strategy could they have used? Anyone?
Instead of avoiding a fight, he could have found the root issue of the problem, which could be something unrelated to work itself and be a personal issue.
Right. Exactly. That is managing conflict. So, final scenario. A leader gets praised for all the work and believes they're the only reason the group did well. What was this leader's mistake? Okay. Um, so the leader's mistake was not keeping their hungers in check. They let their ego take over, and instead of focusing on the team's goal, they just decided to play greedy and take all the praise. Next slide, please. So, emotional and practical support. Heinzfeld and Linsky reminds us that leadership is not easy, but it's totally worth it. Being a leader means facing pressure, criticism, and challenges, but also getting the chance to make a real difference in people's lives. They remind us that anyone can lead, regardless of their background or title, but stepping up to make a difference isn't easy. It comes with risk, resistance, and personal challenges. And this particular quote from Mother Teresa really stuck out and reminded me of this. And she said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples. And if we look at it from a leader's perspective, a leader cannot change everyone, obviously. But a leader could change or inspire others, and that person who they inspire could become an even better leader. Next slide, please. So, tactics for asserting leader influence. Now, let's look at how leaders use their power to implement decisions, facilitate change, and pursue organizational goals. Leaders use their power to influence others, to make decisions, inspire change, and achieve organizational goals. Influence can also be personal and one on one, using relationships, trust, and communication. Other times, it can reach a whole organization or even people outside it. However, not every attempt at influence works, especially if followers feel the leader is only acting for themselves. Leaders need to frequently use a combination of influential strategies, and people who use a wider variety of tactics are typically perceived as having greater power and influence. But before we dive into the tactics, I want us to look at Nelson Mandela, who was the president of South Africa, and how he asserted his leader influence. Next slide, please. So, Nelson Mandela is a classic example of a leader who used influence and not just his power. He didn't use anger or authority to lead South Africa. Instead, he used personal influence, forgiveness, respect, and inspiration to unite a divided nation. He was a transformative leader who reshaped South Africa and inspired others. Even after he was imprisoned for 27 years, he was still able to forgive his adversaries who plotted against him. People did not follow him because they had to. They followed him because they believed in him and they saw the suffering and all the sacrifice he made for his people. Next slide, please. So let's look at the 7 principles for asserting leader influence. And alongside these 7 principles, I have included an example and recommendation on how you can best use these principles in your leadership journey. Next slide, please. So, tactic number 1 is use rational persuasion. This is one of the most used influence tactics where data, facts, and logical arguments are used to persuade others that the proposed way of completing a task is the best way. This can be used when influencing your boss, subordinates, even peers, as everyone respects logical evidence. This is best used when you have technical knowledge and credibility. Since some data can't be proved, people have to trust you to be able to trust your word. So an example is, imagine a department manager proposing a new inventory system. Instead of just saying, I think this will work, they present data showing how it reduces errors by 30% and saves time. Now that's rational persuasion in action. How you can best use this tactic is, always prepare your facts and data carefully. Be transparent about what you know and even what is uncertain. Next slide, please. So the second tactic is make people like you. People are naturally more willing to say yes to someone they like. Leaders who build personal connections, show genuine concern, and treat others with respect are more likely to gain support. Friendliness, consideration, and fairness make people feel valued, which encourages them to cooperate. Also, giving praise and making people feel good about themselves strengthen these positive relationships. An example which I took from the textbook, which it was a really good example, and I thought you guys should hear it. So, an American who was working in Saudi Arabia had noticed that tasks at government offices move really faster if he took the time to visit, chat over tea, and build a friendly rapport before he asked for help. So, by simply showing interest in others and being polite and personable, he gained cooperation far more easily than just by sending formal requests. So, to use this tactic effectively, invest time in building genuine relationships, show respect, listen actively, and acknowledge others' contributions. Next slide, please. So the third tactic is rely on the rule of reciprocity. This rule is based on the idea that people naturally feel obligated to return favors or kindness. Leaders gain influence by giving something of value, whether it is time, resources, help, or emotional support. When leaders first demonstrate generosity or cooperation, others are more likely to respond in kind. This tactic works because it taps into a universal social norm. People want to pay back kindness. It's also the foundation for many other influence tactics. An example, a team leader noticed a member having a hard time completing a task. So that leader offers to help the member finish the task. And later when the leader needs help, the member would be eager to return the favor that the leader because how the leader helped them. So how to use this tactic effectively, be generous with your time, support, and knowledge, without expecting an immediate return of what you gave someone, because all good things come to those who wait. Next slide, please. Right, so the fifth tactic is develop allies. Leaders can influence others by taking the time to talk with their followers and other leaders outside of formal meetings to understand their needs and concerns, as well as to explain problems and describe the leader's point of view. Strong networks allow leaders to influence more effectively because they have support from multiple directions. An example is a project manager wants to implement a new workflow across departments. Instead of announcing it to everyone, they meet with key team members, managers, and stakeholders to discuss concerns, explain the benefits, and listen to suggestions. Over time, they build a group of supporters, people who understand the plan and are willing to advocate for it. Effectively using this tactic, leaders should intentionally build and maintain their networks, take time to connect with their colleagues, listen actively, and collaborate on solutions. Look for opportunities to bring in allies into key roles and support them in ways that align with mutual goals. Next slide, please. The fifth tactic is asking for what you want. Sometimes the simplest is the most effective way to influence others is to ask directly for what you want. Leaders often miss opportunities because they assume they know what they need or want. So by being clear, assertive, and confident about your goals, leaders make it easier for others to understand and respond. Being straightforward shows courage and confidence. So, a department head believes her team needs new software to improve productivity. So instead of waiting for upper management, she takes it into her own hands and prepares her proposal. So to best use this tactic, be assertive but respectful. Know what you want, explain why it matters, and ask clearly. Next slide, please. Remember the principle of scarcity. This is tactic number 6. The principle of scarcity is based on the simple truth. People want more of what they believe is rare or exclusive. When something seems limited or hard to get, it becomes more valuable and desirable. Leaders can use this principle by framing their ideas, opportunities, or information as special or unique. So let's say a company executive tells a marketing team that only a few members will get early access to a new project that could lead to promotions. So, because this opportunity feels very exclusive, everyone becomes more eager to participate and perform to their best ability. So, leaders can use this principle effectively by highlighting the uniqueness or limited nature of what they offer. For instance, emphasize early access or possibly limited spots or even insider information to make people feel like they're getting in on something special. Next slide, please. So the last tactic, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. This last principle shows us that yes, you can have a title, but it doesn't automatically make you influential. You should be able to combine your formal role alongside knowledge, credibility, and trustworthiness in order to become a successful, influential leader. People follow leaders they believe in, not just those with a high rank, but one who follows all these 7 principles. So imagine a school principal who is respected not just for their title, but because they truly understand education deeply, communicate clearly, and treat staff fairly. Their influence goes far beyond rules. It's built on credibility. So to use this final tactic effectively, focus on building both competence and character. Keep learning in your field, communicate honestly, and be consistent in your decisions. Next slide, please. Ethical considerations in using power and politics. Harry Truman once said that leadership is the ability to get people to do what they want and like it. This quote highlights the powerful influence that leaders have. But with that power comes responsibility, because while leaders can be used to achieve great things, it can also be abused. Let's look at a major example of how power can be used unethically is sexual harassment. In the workplace, people often depend on their leaders for things like support, information, and even their jobs, which can make this kind of abuse especially harmful. This is when leaders take advantage of their position to pressure or intimidate others, often linking access to resources or promotions with inappropriate behavior. Not only is this unethical, it's illegal. That's why many organizations now have strict policies to report and prevent harassment. But not all unethical uses of power are that obvious. Sometimes leaders face gray areas where it's hard to tell what's right or wrong. The textbook provides some ethical guidelines to help. 1. Ask whether the action serves personal interests or organizational goals. Uh, consi- Consider whether it respects the rights of others involved. Check if it's fair to everyone affected. And lastly, think, would I want others to do the same? If a leader could answer all these questions honestly, they can usually tell if their actions are ethical or not. Next slide, please. Lastly, our conclusion